So having all of these images here, you can compare all of the crocodilians. Take a look at this one. Can you determine if this is a crocodile or an alligator? So hopefully you were able to determine that this guy is a crocodile. If you look at the teeth on the one in the back, you can see how some of the teeth stick out above its jaw, kind of the irregular shaped lip. And if we go back to this image, you can see teeth above, teeth below sticking out versus the alligator, which has teeth all in a nice ring underneath the mouth. You can see that here in this picture as well. All right, so amniote skulls. So one of the things that helps unite the amniotes into groups is the nature of their skull. What we see in anapsids, turtles, is a skull that looks kind of like this. This is a very simplified version of what some of these skulls look like. And this opening here is the eye orbit. This is the nasal opening. And it's one opening in the skull. Anapsid, A-N, apsid means without an opening. Then if we come down here to the bottom, skipping down to this one, we see what is called a diapsid skull. Di means two. So in addition to the opening for the eye, the opening for the nasal passage, there are two openings in the back part of the skull that are called temporal fenestra. Temporal has to do with the temporal lobe of the brain, the temporal part of the skull, and fenestra means window. So in the temporal portion there are two windows to the inside of the skull, and if the reptile has that, we call it a diapsid. There's a third group called synapsid. Syn means to join together, and what we see is a single opening, but we think that that single opening is not just a single opening. We think that it is the two temporal fenestra of a diapsid that have joined together. This little piece of bone between there disappeared, and two openings became one opening. And this gives us three separate groups of reptiles: anapsids, synapsids, diapsids. The two that we call saurapsids, meaning reptile opening, are anapsids and diapsids. They're kind of grouped together, and then the synapsid reptiles are pulled to the side. What that means is that we have all these groups. The anapsids, which are the turtles, modern day turtles, are all anapsids. They have no temporal fenestra. The diapsids, the ones that have two openings, are dinosaurs, pterosaurs, birds, snakes, lizards, a lot of the other reptiles that were alive during the time of the dinosaurs that aren't dinosaurs. Those are diapsid reptiles. And then synapsids, the ones that have the fused opening in the skull, fused temporal fenestra, are the ones that gave rise to modern mammals. So our skull follows this pattern of development with a single temporal fenestra. Our ancestors and modern day mammals come from this lineage. Locomotion, how does this group get around? Vast majority of them are tetrapods, 4 limbs, but there are some exceptions. Within the squamates, we've got both the amphisbaenins and the snakes. So there are legless reptiles. They use their skin to kind of push off of the ground. Many of the reptiles have very rough, scaly skin. They don't use their skin for respiration. So that hard, scaly skin actually allows them to push off and move around in their environment. Feeding and digestion, mentioned when we looked at some of the squamates, the snakes particularly, unhinging their jaws. Some lizards also have very sticky tongues, like the anurans, so that they can go out and pick up insects, catch insects by shooting their tongue out a great distance to try to grab their prey. So this is a series of pictures that were published online a few years ago of a python that ate an alligator. To give you an idea of digestion in a python, they have very strong stomach acids, and they are capable of digesting not only the soft fleshy parts of their prey, but over time They are capable of digesting even the hard bone. Day 3, the skeleton of the alligator is starting to disappear. Day 4, you can see there's very little left. By day 5, it's pretty much gone, and day 6, everything looks kind of clear. So down to the bone, digesting everything. So this is a video talking about the green anaconda, and I'll try to cover a little bit of what's going on. This is looking specifically at South America. There's an animal called the capybara, and there's a lot of wildlife that lives around the Amazon. The capybara is a member of the group of animals that rodents belong to, so think like a giant land rat. And the anaconda is a large reptilian predator that lives in this environment. And they are aquatic hunters. So what they do is they slither around in their environment. They move around underwater. Try to skip ahead here. They hunt through the reeds. They sneak up on their prey. The capybara, aquatic rodents, again, amphibious perhaps. They live on land and around the water. And they'll sneak up on them where they hang out in their large groups. And the anaconda will wait till it finds one that is on the periphery of the group, comes up through the mud and the sediment, and will lash out, and it will wrap around and basically squeeze, constrict on the capybara. And every time the capybara tries to exhale so that it can then inhale, it squeezes tighter. This is how constrictors will kill their prey, and eventually it will suffocate the capybara. And you can see some of the wounds there. I'll pause that for just a second. That's where the skin is missing. Basically, the damage that the anaconda has taken during its life has not healed. Animals in the wild will often carry injuries like that for as long as they're around. And after time, you can see it's able to make sure its prey is dead, and then it will slowly unhinge its jaws and move its body over the capybara. Capybara is much larger than the diameter of the snake, so the snake ends up with a large lump in its gut after it is eaten, and then it will slowly digest that over time. Excretion and osmoregulation. All right, so reptiles have a cloaca. Cloaca is a combined urogenital opening. So they have one opening to get rid of their solid waste, to get rid of their nitrogenous-based excretory waste, and for reproduction. So in the case of oviparous reptiles, that's where they lay their eggs. Uric acid in desert reptiles is sometimes released to conserve water. Basically, it's similar to what you would see in when a bird goes to the bathroom, bird poops on your car or something like that, and you see both a white liquid material and then a solid brown lump in the center. Because it's coming out of one opening, that's the brown part is the digestive waste, and the white is the excretory waste, which is analogous to urine. And this is a way for them to conserve water. They're not urinating like mammals do, which gets rid of a lot of water in addition to the nitrogenous waste. Temperature regulation. Reptiles live on land. They're exposed to extreme temperature. They're also ectotherms, meaning that they get their body temperature, a lot of their body heat, from the environment. They self-regulate their body temperature by moving to warm or cooler places depending on their needs. You may see some reptiles sitting out on a rock in the sunlight. That's basking. Usually they'll do that earlier in the day to kind of build up body heat so that they can be active later on. Nervous and sensory function. Reptiles have an improved sense of smell from amphibians. They're spending more time out of the water, and smell becomes much more important. Longer snouts. So if you look at an amphibian snout, think like a frog or a salamander. Their faces are kind of short, but in a lot of reptiles, they have extended, elongated snouts. Well, that gives them a better sense of smell. Snakes can actually taste the air by flicking their tongues around. They're picking up particles of what's in the air. And they have what are called, some of them have what are called Jacobson's organs. They're olfactory organs in reptiles that are more developed than in amphibians. Again, basically pulling particles out of the air, tasting the air. In rattlesnakes, they have what are called pit organs, which actually allow them to sense infrared. They can pick up heat, and they use that to determine where their prey is. They're hunting by using heat. All right, so I would be remiss to talk about reptiles but not get into dinosaurs. There's two major groups of dinosaurs that evolved from the Archosaurian lineage, and those two groups are the Ornithischians, which are the bird-hipped dinosaurs. The bird-hipped dinosaurs are thought to be the ancestors of birds due to similar pelvic bones. So when we started finding these dinosaur fossils, we saw these pelvic bones were the ilium and the ischium, and that's where the name Ornithischian, ischium, comes from. The way their bones were arranged in the animal, they kind of pointed backwards, which is what we see in birds. So it was thought, hey, these guys must be ancestors to birds. Another group of dinosaurs that we found a lot of were the Saurischian, or lizard-hipped dinosaurs, and you can see that the ischium points back and the pubis points forward. So this is more like a lizard, so the name saur, lizard, ischium, ischian, lizard-hipped dinosaurs. Now we think that these guys are actually the ancestors to modern-day birds. The theropod lineage is one group of Saurischian dinosaurs. In particular, if you've seen Jurassic Park, velociraptors, those guys were all members of the Saurischian theropod lineage. A lot of the big predators were in T-Rex, Allosaurus are in that same branch of dinosaurs. All right, so how do dinosaurs connect to these other animals we're going to be studying? Well, within that group, Archaeopteryx was found many years ago. Full name, Archaeopteryx lithographica. Archaeopteryx means ancient wing, archaeo, ancient, terra, wing, and they had feathers. So suddenly we have a dinosaur that has feathers, and that leads us to this question of, is it an Ornithischian, is it a Saurischian? And I think now we conclusively say that it is definitely a Saurischian. Dinosaurs with feathers were first found fossilized in amber back in 2015. And this is actually a piece of a dinosaur preserved with the feathers in amber, sap, tree sap. And you can see there's an ant also preserved in there. That was a big discovery because we had surmised from Archaeopteryx that dinosaurs had feathers. This was proof. Here is another close-up view of a dinosaur tail with feathers found 2015. Pretty conclusive evidence that dinosaurs had feathers. So this leads us to how we view dinosaurs. Did they look like this little feathery guy here on this artist's conception picture? Or were they the scaly, more reptilian-looking creatures that we've seen classically? This has changed our view. Some artists had surmised that maybe even T-Rex was covered in feathers. That he may have looked more like a big chicken. Probably not. This is T-Rex skin preserved from the neck, and there's no evidence of feathers or feather attachment points. When we get into birds, we'll talk about feathers. Feathers are actually modified scales, so scales that have turned into part of their insulation. Dinosaurs disappeared 65 million years ago. The current leading theory is that there was an asteroid impact near Chicxulub crater, which is off the peninsula of, in the Gulf of Mexico. The impacts from this huge asteroid hitting, a shockwave, dust cloud, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, forest fires, probably a massive climate change that wiped out the dinosaurs. Modern dinosaurs, this is a picture of Saurischian dinosaurs